Hello. The goal of this training session is to walk you through the process of staff management within the LTSS system. During the past couple of training sessions, we came across questions such as how do you set up a new user, or what do you do when a certain staff member within your agency leaves the agency, or how do you help make sure that every user in the system has the right access and permissions to use the system correctly. Today's webinar is going to walk you through each of these steps and questions. I'm going to first start out by logging in as a AAA agency administrator. It's just a sample agency that I'm using for the purpose of the demo. Every user, when they log in, will be able to see who they're logging in as. When I first log in, it takes me to the home page, as you can see, and one of the key questions that you have is answered on the home page in terms of how you set up users and what you can do to make sure that users have the right access. The home page has a lot of details and information regarding each of these questions and a whole bunch of other detailed descriptions and user manuals that help you use LTSS in a smooth way. Let's first start out by looking at the Notice to Administrators section. It is very important for the administrators within each agency to look at staff profiles, which is what I'm going to come to in a second, and to make sure that each staff member within your agency has the right access. It's also very, very important for the staff members to for the administrators to make sure that if a certain staff member no longer works for your agency, we need to go in and mark that person as inactive. And I will show you some of these in detail in just a minute here. In order to help you with these processes, we have a user manual specifically set up to define the staff management process, and you will see that right here in the administration user manual. When I click on the administration user manual, it opens a PDF for this manual, and you will be able to see that there is a staff management section right here. It will walk you through step-by-step process of how to set up a new user, how do you give them roles, how do you look at staff members within your agency. There are a couple of other pieces such as My Profile and User Directory, which are available to all users in the system, and we will see that in just a second here. So this information can be found in the Administration User Manual. Another user manual that we strongly recommend for every user to look at is the Roles and Permissions User Manual. As you scroll through this user manual, permissions, and roles manual, you will notice that every user in the system by agency is defined here. So if I'm a AAA staff member, for instance, I can see exactly what the AAA administrator can do in the system. I can see how that's different from a AAA administrator or a supervisor in the system. Now, here's an example of how you'd see it. If you look at the DHMH administrator role in the system, you will see what they can do in the system by each module. Of course, DHMH administrators have a lot of access in the system. However, if you are an AIRS user or a UCA user, you will see different access and permissions in these sections here. So in order to get familiar with the system, we strongly recommend that you go in and make sure you look at the role that's assigned to you and the permissions that are set up for each user. So that all of these details are mentioned in the Roles and Permissions User Manual. Now, one of the key questions that people had was, how do you set up a new user when you have a new staff member that joins your agency? This document has been put in the quick tips section. It really quickly tells you in short processes what you can do and how you set up a new user in LTSS. So let me walk you through this here. If John Smith is your new user that joins the agency, and you want to make sure that John Smith has the right information and is set up in LTSS, you start by the supervisor sending Hilltop an email suggesting that I have John Smith working in my agency, and I want John Smith to get access to LTSS. And there's other details that you'll provide, such as first name, last name, email address, and other contact information. Hilltop sets this person up in the system and then gets back in touch with the person with the username and password. Once John Smith has this username, he has to go to his administrator, who will then set up John Smith with an LTSS and create a staff profile for John Smith, and will add this user ID provided by Hilltop. We will add a lot more details to this page right here in the system when it goes live. You will have the contact information in terms of who you get in touch with at Hilltop, and this information will be updated when the system goes live. So that's just a little information about how you set up a new user. Let's jump right into how you set up these users and how you view users within your agency. So from the global menu right here, I go into administration and select my locations. You have to note that I am logged in as the agency administrator is why I see 3 options in this list here. If I was logged in as a case manager within the same agency, I would not be able to see 3 options, and I would only see my profile and user directory. So let's start by looking at my locations. When I go into my locations, I see this drop down here for locations. For most agencies in the system, you will only see one option right here in this drop down. However, if your agency has multiple locations, so let's say I work for a company that has an address, has 2 offices, so I have 1 Main Street, Baltimore, and the zip code, and I have just a neighboring office, and I have 2 addresses and 2 locations, I would see both those options in this drop down right here. And if your staff member works with both the locations, you can go in and set up the staff profile to make sure they have access to both locations. But for most of the agencies set up in the system, you will only see your location. So let me select my Baltimore County location, and when I hit search, it will show me a list of all the folks that work within my agency. So all staff members that work for this AAA in Baltimore County will show up in this list. These lists, as you may know and are familiar with LTSS, are sortable based on each columns here. So if I start by saying I only want to look at staff members that are currently active within your agency, you can sort it based on active. There may be certain staff members within your agency that are active but don't use the system and may not have a login. So you can also sort by users that are allowed login information. Now, let me start by picking just one example of a case manager and the difference between the views of an administrator and a case manager. If I select this case manager and click on details, it takes me to this specific case manager's staff profile. As an administrator, I can update this information right here and also connect this particular staff member to different locations. Since this agency has only one, you see how only Baltimore County shows up. And the critical part is in the roles section. Every administrator needs to make sure that their staff members have the right roles set up. These roles will define what the user can see in the system. The general hierarchy from a system role standpoint is that the administrator can view all the information for the clients within their agency, and the second level is supervisors, and then the third level is case managers. Now this is not connected to the hierarchy in terms of your business roles and titles, etc. in the organization. This is mainly for the roles within LTSS. If your user has administrator and supervisor and case manager checked off, they have the maximum amount of permissions in the system. There are certain users, such as intake roles, whose main role in the system is to do assignments. If your staff member has just assignments as their primary responsibility in LTSS, then you only check off intake and then disable the other ones. We strongly recommend that every administrator should go in and make sure that the roles are set up correctly for each staff member. That being said, you don't need to create new staff profiles for existing staff members. All of this information has been carried over from the legacy Hilltop tracking systems into LTSS. So if there are staff members that are currently using LTSS, you will not have to go in and set up staff profiles for these users in LTSS. The next section here is program types. There are certain agencies that work with multiple programs. So for example, in this case, the AAA also accesses certain functionality that falls within MFP and may also be using the case management functionality. Now, certain staff members in your organization might only focus on the waiver functionality, while certain others might focus only on the MFP functionality, and you may have some that focus on both. This specific program types makes sure that the user has access to either both programs or one of the programs. In addition to the roles, you want to make sure that the program types are set up correctly for each user. The third portion here is login information. Every user needs to have a login in order to get into LTSS. This login information is provided by Hilltop to all the users. If you are currently logging into the system, this information is going to be pre-filled. If you are requesting a new user, an administrator will need to come in and set up this profile for the new user and wait until Hilltop has provided the login information for the new user. So we quickly covered staff profile. This is all there is to know in terms of how to set up a user in the system. When I hit save, all the information is stored for this specific case manager. When I go back to list, I can review this and set this up for multiple users in the system. When we go live on January 28th, we want to make sure that all the users are set up correctly. So it's imperative for the administrators to go in and double check to make sure all their staff members are set up correctly. So this is when a new user joins the agency and when the system goes live. Now let me walk you through an example when a staff member leaves your agency. So let's look at Amy Weaver. Now for example, if Amy leaves the organization, I need to go into the staff profile, edit the staff profile, and make sure to mark the status of each user, of such a user, as inactive. If the user left, let's say, a week ago, you want to make sure you go in and update the date to say the user is inactive as of January 21st. For every user that no longer works within your organization, you want to go in and check to make sure that their status is marked as inactive. I'm going to hit cancel and go back to list. This My Locations option right here, this tab, and the ability to be able to look at various staff profiles is only available to an administrator. So if I were to log in as a case manager that is not an administrator in the system, this functionality won't be available. So let me show you what the user sees when a case manager logs in. Again, this is just for today's demo. All agencies, regardless of whether they're AAA or the coordinating center or AIRS, will have a similar setup. So let's go into the administration tab again. As you may notice, the My Locations tab option just does not show up in this list. A case manager has the ability to update their own profile though. So they have the option to either select My Profile or look at User Directory, which we will come to in just a minute here. When you click on Edit as a case manager and not as an administrator, there's limited information that you can update in the system. So I can update my first name, last name, title, etc. However, you will notice that I cannot update the role because I'm a case manager and not an administrator. I cannot update the program types that I'm associated with, and I cannot change the login information. So for every user within LTSS will have access to staff profile. They will only be able to update their own staff profile and will be able to select and edit minimal fields in their own profile. The other option that every user within LTSS has is to look for other users within the system. So if I want to log in and look for Delmarva staff members, I can select UCA from the agency dropdown, and when I hit search, it will show me all the staff members that work within this agency. You can see the agency that they belong to, and you have a phone number and a fax number and email if available associated with each staff member accessible to you on this list. Every user within LTSS can go into user directory, select an agency, and look for this information. That being said, from a staff management standpoint, my profile and user directory is available to all. However, my locations is only available to administrators. So I'm going to log back in as the administrator. It's because I am an administrator and this is a test site, I can see this drop down. You have to remember that when the system goes live, you will not have the ability to select from this drop down the way I am doing it right now. So let's go in and go into the My Locations tab again and see the users and sort them by login. Now if I want to go back in and search for the case manager that I was looking at, I can type in the filter criteria and look at details and make sure that all the information is set up correctly. You can also set up phone numbers and fax numbers. In the process of setting up a user, an administrator can go in and create a staff profile and set it all up even without the login information. And once you have the login information from Hilltop, you can go in and update this information. So we covered my locations, we covered my profiles, and we covered user directory. I want to take you back to the home page so that you can look at all this information and access this information from the home page. We have certain instructions put up here for administrators to view in the Notice to Administrators section. We have how to request a new user with an LTSS set up in the Quick Tips section. And we have user manuals that will guide you through this process, the roles and permissions process, and also the administration manual. In the next week here, we will have various webinars occurring for different sessions, and information regarding these upcoming events can be found by clicking on this website, and it takes you to ltsstraining.org, and you can see the schedule of all the upcoming webinars right here. Another thing that we plan on doing is posting links to all the recordings of the webinars on the same website. So to access any of these webinars conducted, you need to go to the site and select the session that you would like to view, and you would have a video and audio recording of the webinars available. If you have any questions the day of go live or after regarding setting up users, or if you don't have your login information, or if you don't remember your password, you need to call the help desk line, and the phone number is provided again on the home page, and you will have a passcode to log in and call and talk to the technical support staff. For any other questions, feel free to contact the help desk and they will provide you with a solution to your questions. This homepage is going to be accessible to all the users in the system, so any new user can go into LTSS and look at the various user manuals and access other information to help, such as this presentation, to help you go through LTSS in a smooth and easy way. I believe that's all there is for the staff management webinar. Thank you for your time. Hope this recording was helpful to you. Thank you.